A former casino floor manager just revealed something that could change how you gamble forever. After 15 years designing player experiences for 3 major Las Vegas properties, he's breaking his silence about the psychological tactics casinos use to keep you playing longer than you ever intended. These aren't just clever marketing tricks. These are scientifically engineered manipulation systems that cost players hours of their lives and thousands of dollars every single day. Casinos have spent millions perfecting these psychological tactics, and according to multiple former employees, most players have no idea they're being used. We're going to break down 8 specific tricks that former employees say they were trained to use on guests, and number 7 is so manipulative that several employees quit over it. What you're about to learn could save you thousands the next time you walk into a casino. The first trick casinos use is something most players never consciously notice, but according to a former floor designer who worked on properties in Vegas and Atlantic City, it's one of the most effective retention tools they have. Trick number 1, the maze layout design. This isn't accidental architecture. Internal design documents specifically outline principles for creating what they call environmental immersion. The goal is simple: make it as difficult as possible for you to leave. Former employees report that casino floors are deliberately designed with no straight paths to exits, strategically placed mirrors that distort your sense of direction, and carpet patterns that look identical throughout different sections of the floor. Frank, a former pit boss who worked at a major Vegas property for 12 years, tells a story that perfectly illustrates why this matters. He watched an elderly woman spend 45 minutes trying to find the exit after she decided to leave. She passed the same slot machine 6 times during her wandering, and each time she walked by, the bright lights and sounds pulled at her attention. On the 6th pass she sat down and said to herself, just one more spin. According to Frank, she ended up staying another 90 minutes and lost $1,200 trying to hit one more bonus round. The psychological mechanism at work here is what researchers call environmental immersion, and it creates genuine time distortion in your brain. When you can't see windows, clocks, or clear pathways to exits, your internal sense of time breaks down. According to internal training documents from multiple properties, this disorientation is intentional and measurable. Players who experience difficulty navigating the floor stay an average of 37 minutes longer per session. That might not sound like much, but across thousands of daily visitors, those extra minutes translate to millions in additional revenue. And if you think that's manipulative, wait until you hear about trick number 2. Most people assume casino environments are just naturally comfortable, but a former HVAC technician who worked on climate systems for a major resort revealed something that should concern every player. Trick number 2, the oxygenation and temperature control. Casinos don't just control the temperature, they manipulate the actual oxygen levels in the air you breathe. Documentation from a major Vegas property shows they spent $2.4 million upgrading their oxygen system specifically to maintain air at 21 to 23% oxygen, which is slightly elevated compared to typical indoor environments. The physiological effect of this is subtle but powerful. Elevated oxygen levels increase alertness and reduce your perception of fatigue. You genuinely don't feel tired the way you would in a normal environment. Maria, a former casino host who worked the high-limit rooms, describes specific training she received about what management called guest comfort optimization. They were taught that the combination of perfect temperature, held precisely between 68 and 70 degrees, and enhanced oxygen creates an environment where players lose track of time and physical discomfort. The result is predictable. Players stay 2 to 3 hours longer than they originally intended. But the manipulation goes deeper than just oxygen and temperature. Combined with constant artificial lighting that eliminates any circadian rhythm cues, your body loses its natural ability to recognize that hours are passing. Before we continue, I want you to think about the last time you were in a casino. Did you notice you never felt tired? Did you realize you had no idea whether it was day or night? Now you know why. These environmental controls aren't about comfort. They're about removing every natural signal your body uses to tell you it's time to leave. Now, these first 2 tricks manipulate your environment, but trick number 3 manipulates something even more personal. Trick number 3, the near-miss programming. A former slot technician who worked for one of the largest gaming machine manufacturers in the world has revealed something that fundamentally changes how you should think about slot machines. These machines aren't just displaying random results. They're programmed to show you jackpot symbols landing just above or below the pay line at rates that would never occur in truly random distribution. Internal programming specifications that former technicians have reviewed show that machines generate near misses at rates up to 30% higher than true random probability would produce. The reason this matters relates directly to your brain chemistry. When you see those jackpot symbols land one position away from a winning combination, your brain releases dopamine almost identically to how it would if you'd actually won. Derek, a former slot technician who serviced machines on the Vegas Strip for 8 years, describes watching players from his position near the machine banks. He heard the same phrase over and over, "I was so close." He counted one player say variations of this 15 times in a single hour. That player kept feeding money into the machine because their brain genuinely believed they were getting closer to winning, when in reality, that near miss was programmed to appear and had no predictive value whatsoever. But here's what makes this especially manipulative. Modern multi-line slot machines don't just show you near misses on the main pay line, they show them on multiple pay lines simultaneously. You'll see jackpot symbols lined up perfectly on the line above your bet, on the line below it, and diagonal patterns that would pay massive amounts if only you'd bet on those specific line combinations. According to former programmers, this creates what internal documents call engagement multiplication, where a single spin generates multiple dopamine responses from multiple near-miss patterns. The case study that disturbed Derek most involved a woman who became convinced the machine was getting hot after she saw 6 near misses in 20 spins. She told the player next to her she could feel it was about to hit. She played another $800 chasing that feeling. The machine never delivered the big win she was certain was coming. Now, casinos will absolutely tell you that slot machine results are random, and technically that's true. Each individual spin is determined by a random number generator. But former programmers say what casinos don't advertise is that the display of where symbols land on the visible reels can be manipulated to show near misses more frequently than pure randomness would produce. Your brain doesn't know you weren't actually close to winning. It just knows it saw those symbols almost line up and it wants you to try again. And speaking of tricks that manipulate your brain chemistry, trick number 4 is so deceptive that several former employees said it made them uncomfortable watching players fall for it. Trick number 4, the wins disguised as losses. This manipulation is particularly insidious because it makes you celebrate while you're losing money. Here's how it works. On modern multi-line slot machines you might bet $2.50 across 50 lines, win 75 cents on a few of those lines, and the machine erupts in celebration. Lights flash, music plays, your winnings are displayed prominently on screen. Former employees reveal that internal training documents actually called these psychological wins because they trigger the same neurological response as genuine wins despite being net losses. The scale of this deception is staggering. On a typical 50-line penny slot, internal reports suggest up to 65% of so-called wins are actually losses when you compare what you bet to what you received. Remember that story I mentioned earlier about the bachelorette party? Here's what really happened. Jenny was in Atlantic City celebrating her friend's upcoming wedding, and she sat down at a multi-line slot machine with $300 she'd budgeted for the evening. For 3 hours, she heard celebration sounds, saw winning combinations, watched her credit meter go up and down. She genuinely believed she was breaking even, maybe down a little but nothing serious. When she finally checked her checking account, she discovered she'd gone through $2,100. The machine had celebrated probably 200 times during her session, but the overwhelming majority of those celebrations were for wins smaller than her total bet. The psychological mechanism here is straightforward but devastating. Your brain releases dopamine with every celebration, regardless of whether you've experienced a net loss. The sounds, the lights, the visual presentation of credits being added, all of it triggers reward pathways that make you want to continue playing. Industry insiders report that in training, they were taught to call these engagement enhancers, never false wins or deceptive celebrations. But here's where it gets even worse. Former audio engineers who worked on slot machine sound design reveal that the volume and intensity of celebration sounds actually increase during these losses disguised as wins. The machine is literally screaming congratulations while your bankroll evaporates. Let me break down the math with a specific example. You bet $2.50 across 50 lines. The machine shows 3 matching symbols on 8 of those lines, paying you 75 cents total. You've just lost $1.75, but the machine celebration makes it feel like you won something meaningful. This happens spin after spin, and your brain never registers the cumulative loss because it's experiencing constant celebration. Players genuinely believe they're winning when they're hemorrhaging money. If you've ever experienced this, let me know in the comments. And if you're finding this valuable, please subscribe. We're about to reveal tricks that even regular gamblers don't know about. Now, the first 4 tricks manipulate your perception, but tricks 5 and 6 manipulate something even more powerful: your emotions and social instincts. A former casino host who worked in player development for 9 years has revealed what she calls the loyalty trap, and the mathematics behind it should disturb anyone who's ever felt good about earning player rewards. Internal documents from multiple casino properties show that the average comp return rate ranges from 0.08% to 0.15% of your theoretical loss. Let me translate what that means in practice. To earn a $25 buffet credit, you need to generate approximately $2,500 in theoretical loss through your play. But casinos would never present it that way. Former hosts report they were specifically trained to emphasize points earned and never, under any circumstances, mention the expected losses required to earn those points. Patricia was a regular player at a regional casino who tracked her comp points religiously. Her former host describes watching Patricia check her points balance multiple times during every visit, and the psychological mechanism at work was textbook sunk cost fallacy. Patricia would be up or down on any given night, but if she was sitting at 1,847 points and knew that 2,000 points earned her $50 in resort credit, she would keep playing until she hit that threshold. The mathematics were brutal and completely invisible to her. According to the internal player tracking system her host could access, Patricia was losing an average of $3.20 for every comp point she earned. Those final 153 points she was chasing to reach 2,000 cost her approximately $490 in theoretical loss, and she did it to earn $50 in resort credit that she genuinely believed she was getting for free. But the manipulation goes deeper than simple math most players don't calculate. Former hosts describe specific retention protocols for players approaching comp thresholds. If the system showed a player was within 15% of their next reward tier, hosts received alerts to make contact and remind the player how close they were to earning something valuable. The terminology used in internal communications is revealing. These notifications were called sticky points because they reliably stuck players to machines longer than they intended to stay. One former VIP host describes a case that made her seriously question her role. A regular guest, a man in his 60s who visited twice monthly, always played conservatively and stuck to strict loss limits. But every December his behavior changed dramatically. The casino's tier status reset on January 1st, and this player had maintained platinum status for 3 consecutive years. The benefits were modest, probably worth $600 annually in practical value, but the status had become part of his identity. He told the host directly, "I'm a platinum member." That December the host watched him play recklessly for an entire weekend, chasing the play requirements to maintain his status for another year. He lost $18,000 in 3 days to keep a tier worth $600 in actual benefits. When the host gently suggested he was playing more than usual, he became defensive and said he'd earned his status and wasn't going to lose it now. The psychological capture was complete. The system gets even more calculated with personalized outreach. Former marketing employees reveal that player tracking systems automatically generate emails when members haven't visited in their typical pattern. These messages are personalized based on previous behavior and specifically designed to trigger return visits. A player who typically chases comp points receives an email showing exactly how many points they need for their next reward. A player who values tier status receives projections about maintaining their level. According to former employees who built these campaigns, the response rates were extraordinary. Approximately 41% of targeted players returned within 72 hours of receiving status-related outreach. The ultimate trick is creating identity around tier status. Players don't just have points, they become diamond members or platinum players. That identity shift makes the sunk cost fallacy exponentially more powerful because now you're not just chasing rewards, you're defending who you are. And if you think creating artificial loyalty is manipulative, trick number 6 targets something even more primal. Trick number 6. The social proof and group gambling design. This manipulation preys on fundamental human psychology that evolved over millions of years, and former casino designers admit they engineer environments specifically to exploit it. Internal casino design documents literally include specifications for what they call winner visibility optimization. The principle is simple. Jackpot celebrations need to be seen and heard across the entire floor because nothing attracts players like watching someone else win. Marcus worked as a slot attendant for 7 years, and he describes a phenomenon floor staff called wave gambling. One significant jackpot win would create a crowd of spectators, and within minutes, every machine surrounding the winner would be occupied by players who weren't gambling 30 seconds earlier. He recalls one specific instance where a $12,000 jackpot on Wheel of Fortune created a visible ripple effect. In the 90 minutes following that win, the 20 machines in the surrounding area generated $47,000 in total play from players who sat down specifically because they witnessed that jackpot. The psychological explanation is straightforward. Humans are fundamentally wired to assume that if someone succeeded in a particular location, they can succeed there too. This instinct made perfect sense for our ancestors finding food or water, but it has no logical application to random gambling machines. Yet former employees confirm the effect is powerful and predictable. But casinos don't just wait for organic jackpots to create this effect. Former slot attendants report they were explicitly instructed to process jackpot wins slowly and loudly. When a machine hits a significant win, attendants don't just pay out quickly and quietly. They gather around the machine, let the sirens and lights run their full cycle, and create as much spectacle as regulations allow. The goal is maximizing the number of players who witness the celebration and feel compelled to try their own luck. The really calculated part involves stadium-style gaming, where multiple players share screens showing communal bonus rounds. These multiplayer configurations create social dynamics that make walking away almost impossible. When you're sitting with strangers who are all cheering for shared bonuses, you're not just fighting your own impulse to keep playing, you're fighting social pressure not to be the person who breaks up the group. A case study from a former floor supervisor illustrates this perfectly. Four friends came in together and sat at a Buffalo Diamond Stadium slot configuration. The shared bonus features meant all 4 players were invested in each other's outcomes. Every bonus trigger became a group celebration. 6 hours later, when the supervisor checked on them during her floor walk, all 4 were still playing. Each person had lost between $800 and $1,500, but nobody wanted to be the first to quit because that would end the group experience. One of them told the supervisor directly, "We would have left 2 hours ago, but everyone else was still playing." The social pressure had trapped all 4 of them in continued play that none of them individually wanted to continue. Former dealers report watching this dynamic hundreds of times at table games too. Players comfort each other about losses, creating permission to continue playing. One player says they're down $600, another says they're down $800, and somehow this shared misery becomes justification to keep going rather than reason to stop. Your logical brain recognizes you should leave, but your social brain doesn't want to abandon the group or be perceived as the quitter. Casinos understand that social brain wins that fight almost every time. The cruelest aspect is that this trick makes you feel good while it's working. You're bonding with other players, sharing excitement, feeling part of something communal. Those are genuine positive emotions, but they're being weaponized to keep you playing longer and losing more than you would if you were gambling alone. Former employees report this was one of the hardest manipulations to watch because players seemed happy even as their losses mounted. The emotional reinforcement from social connection masked the financial damage happening simultaneously. Now, those 6 tricks are manipulative, but tricks 7 and 8 are where things get really dark. In fact, trick number 7 is why several employees said they actually felt guilty coming to work. Trick number 7, the cashless gaming and digital credit psychology. This is the manipulation that made multiple employees walk away from casino careers, and once you understand the mechanism, you'll see why their guilt became unbearable. A former cage cashier who processed transactions for 8 years describes specific training all cash-handling employees received about what management called the abstraction of money. The progression was deliberate and calculated. Casinos moved from coins to bills, then from bills to tickets, then from tickets to cards, and now to phone apps that let you transfer funds without ever touching physical currency. The psychological principle is simple and devastatingly effective. The further money gets from physical cash, the easier it becomes to spend. Internal studies that casinos commissioned from behavioral psychology firms showed that digital credits increased average session spending by 23 to 31% compared to players using physical currency. Let that sink in for a moment. The same person playing the same games will spend nearly a third more money simply by using digital credits instead of cash. The technical implementation started with ticket-in ticket-out systems, which most players now take for granted. But former employees reveal they were trained to promote digital wallets and casino apps with almost aggressive enthusiasm. The reason was never about convenience for players, despite what the marketing materials claimed. When you're pressing buttons that say $2.50 instead of feeding $20 bills into a machine, your brain doesn't process the spending as real money leaving your possession. The neural pathways that create pain responses to loss simply don't activate the same way. Here's the story I mentioned earlier that represents how devastating this disconnect can become. Robert was a regular player in his mid-50s who'd always been careful with money. He set strict limits and never brought more than he was willing to lose. Then the property introduced their mobile app integration, and a casino host convinced him to link his checking account for easier play. The pitch was seductive. No need to visit the ATM, track your points automatically, faster play means more entertainment per hour. Robert started his session with $500 preloaded on the app. But here's what made this session different from every previous visit. When his credits ran low, his phone buzzed with a notification asking if he wanted to reload. He clicked yes without leaving his chair. No walk to the ATM. No physical moment of seeing bills leave his wallet. Just a button press and his credits refreshed. A former floor supervisor who witnessed Robert's session describes what happened next. Over the course of 4 hours, Robert reloaded 7 times through his phone without ever touching physical money. Each reload took less than 10 seconds. He'd tap his phone, authenticate with his fingerprint, and return to playing within moments. When he finally checked his bank account, Robert went completely pale. He'd transferred $4,300 from his checking account. The supervisor watched Robert sit motionless at the machine for several minutes, staring at his phone screen in what appeared to be genuine shock. He told the supervisor he had no idea he'd spent that much. In his mind, he'd maybe reloaded 2 or 3 times. The digital abstraction had completely disconnected his perception from reality. Former employees described specific training they received about encouraging digital wallet adoption. They were given actual scripts with responses to common objections. If a player said they preferred cash because it helped them control spending, employees were taught to emphasize convenience and point tracking rather than directly addressing the spending control concern. The scripts never acknowledged that digital systems might lead to increased spending. According to former employees who underwent this training, the unstated truth everyone understood was simple. Digital wallet users spend significantly more money, and getting players to adopt digital payment was a priority that came from the highest levels of casino management. The psychological research supporting this manipulation is overwhelming. Studies consistently show that credit card users spend 83% more than cash users in identical purchasing scenarios. Casino apps take this effect even further by eliminating even the minor friction of swiping a card. Modern systems accept tap-to-pay and biometric authentication, letting you reload funds while sitting at a machine in under 10 seconds. The dangerous ease of this process destroys the natural pause that used to occur when players had to physically obtain more money. That pause was often the moment when players reconsidered whether they wanted to continue, but digital systems eliminate that reflection opportunity entirely. Apps amplify the manipulation by sending low-balance notifications that explicitly encourage reloading. These aren't neutral alerts. They're designed with language like, "keep the fun going," and "you're so close to your next reward tier." Former developers who worked on casino apps confirmed these notifications were extensively tested, with specific phrasing chosen based on which messages generated the highest reload conversion rates. A former casino manager admits the internal tracking data was shocking in its clarity. Digital wallet users were compared against cash users controlling for every variable: game preference, average bet size, typical session frequency, age, income level. Across every demographic segment, digital users spent more. In some cases, significantly more. One specific case study involved a woman who'd been a regular player for 6 years. Her average loss per visit with cash was $200 to $300. After adopting the casino app, her average loss jumped to over $800 per session within 3 months. The pattern was so consistent it became predictable. Several floor supervisors reported they felt complicit watching elderly players reload repeatedly through apps. When someone feeds bills into a machine, you can see them hesitate, see them count what they're spending, see the physical reality register on their face. With apps, that friction completely disappears. Players tap their phones with the same casual ease they'd use to skip a song, except each tap is transferring hundreds or thousands of dollars. The guilt factor became overwhelming for employees who'd watched gambling behavior for years. They could see the difference digital systems made, could see players lose track of spending in ways that never happened with physical cash, and they knew the systems were designed specifically to create that disconnect. And if eliminating the reality of money sounds calculated, trick number 8 represents the future of casino manipulation and should genuinely concern everyone who gambles. Trick number 8. The AI and behavioral tracking systems. A former surveillance operator who worked in casino security operations has revealed capabilities that sound like science fiction but represent current reality in major gambling properties. Facial recognition software, player card tracking, and betting pattern analysis feed into artificial intelligence systems that can predict when you're about to quit with 78% accuracy. Major casino chains have invested over $40 million in predictive analytics platforms, and according to former employees who worked with these systems, the technological sophistication is genuinely startling. The AI doesn't just track what you're doing, it predicts what you're about to do and triggers interventions to change your behavior. When the system detects what programmers call quit signals, it immediately alerts floor staff to intervene. Those quit signals include checking your phone, looking around the casino floor, playing at slower pace, checking your watch or the time, and stopping play for more than 90 seconds. According to former staff, within 90 seconds of the system identifying these behaviors, something happens. A casino host appears offering a complimentary drink. The machine you're playing suddenly hits a moderate win that wasn't due to true randomness but rather a programmed retention feature. A cocktail server approaches asking if you need anything. These aren't coincidences. Jennifer worked as a casino host for 5 years before quitting specifically because of what she calls retention protocols. She carried a tablet showing real-time player profiles with AI-generated recommendations for retention tactics tailored to individual players. When a player the system identified as high value showed quit signals, Jennifer received an alert with specific suggestions. For one player down $1,200 and showing departure behaviors, Jennifer was sent to offer a dinner comp. The system had analyzed this player's history and determined food comps had a 62% success rate at extending his sessions. Jennifer made the offer, the player accepted, and he stayed another 2 hours after dinner. He lost an additional $800. Jennifer describes the success rate of these interventions as disturbingly high. Approximately 60% of players who showed quit signals but received targeted interventions stayed longer. The system tracked outcomes and continuously refined its recommendations based on what worked. But the invasiveness goes far beyond simple intervention timing. These systems build comprehensive psychological profiles on individual players. Every preference, every vulnerability, every behavioral pattern gets documented and analyzed. The data collected includes favorite machine types, average session duration, betting patterns when winning versus losing, response rates to different types of comps, and what former analysts call tilt points, meaning the loss threshold where players typically either quit or begin chasing losses more aggressively. A former data analyst describes his work as building psychological profiles, and the ethical implications eventually drove him to resign. The system would generate real-time assessments like, Player 4479 is 83% likely to chase losses if interrupted now with a moderate comp offer. 3 members of his analytics department quit within the same quarter, all citing discomfort with how predictive and manipulative the systems had become. The most disturbing case study involves an elderly woman whose playing patterns clearly indicated problem gambling behaviors. She was flagged in the system as a high-value retention target specifically because her behavior showed she had difficulty stopping once she started losing. Rather than receiving any intervention aimed at responsible gambling, she was designated for enhanced retention tactics. The casino sent her personalized offers timed to moments when data suggested she was most vulnerable to returning. According to the former analyst who saw her profile, she eventually refinanced her home to maintain her playing frequency. The system had identified her vulnerability and exploited it systematically. The technology trajectory is accelerating. As of 2024, AI-driven behavioral prediction systems operate in approximately 68% of major casino properties. The systems grow more sophisticated every quarter as machine learning algorithms process more data and identify more subtle behavioral patterns. Every decision you make is being analyzed in real time to keep you playing longer, and the predictions become more accurate as the systems learn. Former employees emphasize this isn't speculation about future technology. This is current reality, operating right now in casinos across the country. The chilling implication is that you're not just fighting your own impulses when you gamble, you're fighting artificial intelligence systems designed specifically to identify your vulnerabilities and exploit them before you're even consciously aware you're ready to leave. Now that you know all 8 tricks, we need to talk about what this really means. The individual tricks are manipulative enough on their own, but here's what former employees say is truly dangerous and what most players never recognize until it's too late. These 8 systems don't operate in isolation. They work together, amplifying each other in ways that create what one former casino manager called the perfect storm of psychological manipulation. When you walk through those casino doors, you're not facing one trick or 2 tricks. You're entering an environment where every single manipulation is operating simultaneously, and the combined effect is exponentially more powerful than any individual component. A former operations manager who oversaw floor performance for a major strip property describes how these systems integrate. The maze layout disorients you and removes easy escape while the oxygen and temperature control eliminates fatigue signals. While you're lost and comfortable, the near-miss programming on machines keeps your brain engaged with dopamine hits. Those false wins disguised as losses maintain the chemical reward cycle without requiring the casino to actually pay out. The comp point system creates artificial goals that keep you chasing thresholds, and the social proof from other players' wins triggers your instinct to stay where success is happening. Meanwhile, your digital wallet removes every friction point that might make you reconsider your spending, and artificial intelligence systems monitor your behavior to intervene the exact moment you show signs of wanting to leave. Let's follow a typical player through this manipulation ecosystem to understand how it operates in practice. You enter the casino with a plan to play for maybe an hour with $300. The maze layout means you pass dozens of exciting machines on your deliberately confusing path to the game you intended to play. The environmental controls ensure you feel alert and comfortable with no sense of time passing. You sit down at your chosen machine, and within the first 20 spins, you see 3 near misses that make you feel like the machine is ready to pay. The fourth hit triggers a bonus that celebrates loudly even though you won back less than your total bets cost. You're now 40 minutes in and you've completely lost track of time because there are no windows, no clocks, and your body isn't sending any fatigue signals. You check your player card and see you're at 830 points, just 170 away from your next comp tier. You decide to play until you reach that threshold. Another player 2 machines down hits a jackpot, and the celebration draws a crowd. You feel energized by the win even though it wasn't yours, and you increase your bet slightly because clearly this area is paying out. Your balance gets low, and your phone buzzes with a notification from the casino app asking if you'd like to reload. You click yes without thinking and $500 more appear as credits. No walk to the ATM. No moment of reconsidering. Just instant continuation of play. You've now been playing for 2.5 hours, which is 90 minutes longer than you planned. The AI system detects you checking your phone and glancing around, classic quit signals. Within 60 seconds, a casino host appears with a comp offer for the buffet. You accept because you're hungry anyway and you figure you'll play just a little more after eating since you're already here. By the time you finally leave, 6 hours have passed and you've gone through $1,800. You never consciously decided to stay that long or spend that much. Each individual moment felt like a reasonable decision, but you were never making decisions in a neutral environment. You were operating inside a system designed to extract exactly this outcome. Former casino managers admit this synergistic approach is explicitly discussed in operational planning. Training materials don't present these 8 tricks as separate tactics. They present them as integrated components of what internal documents call the Total Guest Experience Optimization System. Every element is designed to work with every other element, creating an environment where the mathematical probability of you leaving according to your original plan approaches 0. The cumulative effect is measured and tracked. Internal performance data shows that players exposed to all 8 systems simultaneously stay 3.7 times longer on average than players in control environments where some systems are absent. The difference isn't subtle or marginal. It's dramatic and predictable. No single trick would be sufficient to keep you playing for hours beyond your intention, but all 8 working together create an environment where resistance becomes nearly impossible. Your conscious mind thinks you're making decisions, but you're actually responding to dozens of calculated manipulations operating simultaneously on your perception, your emotions, your social instincts, and your basic physiology. Former employees who've seen the internal data describe the effectiveness as almost perfect. The systems work on virtually everyone regardless of intelligence, experience, or intention. The rare players who resist successfully are those who maintain rigid external commitments that force departure. Someone waiting in the car, a flight to catch, a meeting that can't be missed. Players without those external forcing mechanisms almost universally stay longer than they planned and spend more than they intended, and that outcome isn't accidental or coincidental. It's the designed result of 8 manipulation systems working in perfect coordination. Here's what should concern you most about everything you've just learned. This knowledge only matters if you actually use it. Former casino employees who've shared these 8 tricks aren't speaking out because they want to destroy the industry or because they hate gambling. Most of them enjoyed aspects of their casino careers and don't judge people who choose to gamble. They're revealing these manipulations because they watched too many people lose too much while having no idea they were being systematically exploited. The advantage you now possess is the same advantage former employees had. You can see the machinery operating while it's happening. When you notice the layout confusion, you can pull out your phone and use GPS to navigate directly to exits. When you realize hours have passed without fatigue, you can set phone alarms that force awareness of time. When machines show near misses, you can consciously recognize that those symbols aren't predicting anything. When celebrations erupt for net losses, you can check your actual credit balance instead of trusting the emotional manipulation. When comp points seem appealing, you can calculate the real cost by dividing expected loss by reward value. When other players win around you, you can remember their results have zero correlation to your odds. When digital wallets seem convenient, you can choose cash exclusively and enforce physical limits. When staff approach with perfectly timed offers, you can recognize AI-driven retention tactics. Former employees emphasize that conscious awareness destroys approximately 80% of these tricks' effectiveness. The manipulations rely fundamentally on operating below your conscious recognition. The moment you see them happening in real time, their psychological power diminishes dramatically. Casinos understand this, which is why they never advertise these systems and why employees sign extensive non-disclosure agreements. The meta-awareness of being manipulated itself becomes your primary defense. But these 8 tricks aren't unique to physical casino environments, and that's something former employees want every potential gambler to understand before the industry landscape shifts completely. Online gambling platforms, mobile gaming apps, and sports betting software use these identical principles amplified by the convenience of gambling from anywhere at any time. A former programmer who worked on online casino platforms describes having even more sophisticated tools for manipulation in digital spaces than anything possible on physical casino floors. Autoplay features that eliminate the deliberate action of initiating each bet, one-click deposit systems that make reloading faster than any casino app, push notifications sent when AI systems detect you haven't played recently. The digital environment removes every remaining friction point that might create pause. The regulatory framework hasn't caught up to the technology, and former regulators admit they're fighting manipulation tactics they don't fully understand using rules written for entirely different contexts. The online gambling market has grown to represent billions in annual revenue, and the accessibility raises concerns that go far beyond anything possible when gambling required physical travel to a casino location. If the 8 tricks operating in physical casinos concern you, you need to understand that online environments are exponentially more manipulative. Everything that naturally slows you down in person, walking to ATMs, physical exhaustion, social visibility of your behavior, disappears completely in digital spaces. Former employees who've worked both physical and online operations universally describe online platforms as more dangerous. One former online casino analyst describes the behavioral dashboards available to operators as disturbing in their predictive accuracy and the absence of any human interaction that might create ethical pause. The future development of virtual reality casino experiences represents the next frontier, combining the immersive environmental manipulation of physical casinos with the frictionless convenience of online platforms. Industry investment in these emerging technologies runs into billions of dollars, and former employees express genuine concern about manipulation capabilities that don't yet exist but are actively being developed. This isn't anti-gambling advocacy or moral judgment about entertainment choices. Multiple former employees emphasize they're not saying never gamble. They're saying gamble with complete awareness of exactly what's being done to influence your behavior. Entertainment value is real and personal, but it requires honest accounting where you treat losses as the cost of that entertainment rather than investment with expected returns. The players former employees watched succeed at maintaining healthy relationships with gambling were those who treated it as pure entertainment with absolutely rigid budgets set before entering. The players who lost everything were uniformly those who believed they had systems or could beat the odds. Understanding these 8 tricks doesn't mean you can't enjoy gambling. It means you can't be unconsciously manipulated anymore. Remember Frank from the very beginning? After he learned about these manipulation systems, he completely changed his approach. He still visits casinos occasionally, but now he uses cash exclusively, sets strict time and money limits before entering, and recognizes every trick as it's being used on him. He describes gambling now as entertainment he controls rather than an environment that controls him. The former employees sharing this information carry genuine guilt about their participation in systems designed to exploit human psychology. They watched people lose houses, marriages, retirement savings, and futures. Speaking publicly about these manipulations is how many of them make peace with their past roles. If even one person makes genuinely informed decisions because of this information, they consider that redemption worth the professional risks of breaking industry silence. You now possess knowledge that casinos spend millions ensuring most players never acquire. These 8 tricks only work when you don't know they exist. Once you see them, you can't unsee them. If you found this valuable, subscribe because we'll continue exposing industry tactics most players never learn.